Miss Carter, should we proceed with the eviction? The manager asked, and suddenly, no one at that table was laughing anymore, but 3 hours earlier, they couldn't stop. My name is Olivia Carter. I'm 31 years old, and that night, my entire family sat around a polished oak table on the 42nd floor of a building they thought belonged to someone else. My brother ordered a $120 ribeye without looking at the price. My sister asked for a second bottle of wine like it was nothing, and when the bill came, my dad slid it across the table and said, "You wanted to join us, Olivia. You can cover it." I laughed softly and said, "I'm actually broke right now." That's when it started. The smirks, the looks, the quiet little chuckles that weren't so quiet. "Still broke?" my brother said, shaking his head. "At 31? My mom didn't even look at me. She just sighed like I'd proven a point she'd been making for years. "You've always been bad with money," she said. Always. That word stuck, because this wasn't new. Growing up, there were two versions of success in my family, the visible kind, and me. My sister got a $35,000 graduation gift. I got a handshake and a figure it out. My brother got his startup funded. I got told to be realistic. And eventually, I stopped correcting them. I stopped explaining, stopped defending, stopped trying to be seen. Because what they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that 2 years ago, at 2:17 a.m., sitting alone in a one-bedroom apartment, I signed a wire transfer for $2.3 million, and I never put my name on a single document. Not the title, not the company, not the lease agreements. I learned early, if you want control, you don't always need credit. So I let them believe I was broke. I let them laugh. I let them underestimate me, because timing matters. And that night, sitting in that restaurant, watching them tear into me over a dinner bill, I knew the timing was finally right. Because 10 minutes later, someone walked up to our table, looked directly at me, and said my name. The man who walked up to our table did not look at my father, or my brother, or anyone else. He looked directly at me. "Ms. Carter," he said, calm, professional, like this was the most normal thing in the world. "We need your approval on the lease restructuring before midnight." The table went quiet, not confused quiet, sharp, uncomfortable quiet. My brother let out a short laugh, like he thought it was a joke. "Wrong table, man," he said, waving him off. "She cannot even pay for dinner." The man did not move, did not smile, did not even blink. "No," he said simply, "this is the correct table." I could feel every eye shift toward me. My mother finally looking up, my father narrowing his eyes, trying to piece something together. I leaned back slightly in my chair, took a slow breath, and for a second, I said nothing. Because this moment, this exact moment, was something I had been building toward for years. "Give me a minute," I told him, my voice steady, almost casual. He nodded once and stepped back, just far enough to wait, close enough to remind everyone he was still there. My sister leaned forward, her voice low but sharp. "Olivia, what is he talking about?" I picked up my glass, took a small sip, and set it down carefully. "Just business," I said. My brother scoffed immediately. "What business?" he said, louder this time. "You just said you were broke." I smiled, not wide, not dramatic, just enough. "I said I was broke," I repeated. "Not that I do not own anything." That was when the shift started, subtle at first, like the room itself was trying to catch up. My father straightened in his seat, the same way he used to when he thought he was about to correct me. "Olivia," he said slowly, "what exactly are you implying?" I looked at him, really looked this time, and for a second, I almost answered honestly. Almost. But then I remembered every dinner, every comment, every time they reduced me to a disappointment they could explain away. So instead, I reached into my bag, pulled out my phone, and opened a single email. No long speech, no explanation, just one forwarded message, timestamped 2:17 a.m., 2 years ago. Subject line, confirmation of wire transfer, $2,300,000. I turned the screen slightly, not enough for them to read everything, just enough for them to see the number. My mother's breath caught soft, barely there, but I heard it. My brother leaned in, squinting, trying to process what he was seeing. That is not yours," he said quickly, too quickly. I locked my phone and slipped it back into my bag. "You're right," I said calmly. "It is not in my name." That gave him relief. I saw it instantly. The way his shoulders dropped, the way he leaned back like the world made sense again. "See," he said, glancing at the others. "I told you." I let the silence sit, just for a second longer. Then I looked toward the man still waiting beside us. "Go ahead," I said. He stepped forward immediately, placed a thin folder on the table, and turned it so it faced me. "We cannot proceed without your authorization," he said. No hesitation, no doubt, just certainty. And that was when my father's voice changed. "What is this?" he asked, not confident anymore, not in control. I did not answer him. I just opened the folder slowly, flipped to the last page, and picked up the pen resting neatly on top. Because what they still did not understand, what they were just starting to feel, was that this was never about proving I had money. It was about showing them that everything they thought they understood about me was wrong. And the moment I signed that page, everything in that room was about to change. I did not rush it. I let the pen rest between my fingers for just a second longer than necessary, long enough for everyone at that table to feel it, that quiet pressure building, that shift they could not name yet. My father leaned forward slightly, his voice tighter now. "Olivia, stop this." "What are you doing?" I glanced at him, calm, almost distant. "Handling business," I said, and then I signed. One smooth motion, no hesitation, no second thoughts. The sound of the pen against paper was soft, but in that moment, it felt louder than anything else in the room. The manager nodded immediately, like a switch had been flipped. "Thank you, Ms. Carter," he said, then closed the folder with precise care. He did not look at anyone else. He did not explain. He just turned and stepped away, already pulling out his phone as he walked. And, just like that, it was done. But the silence that followed, that was different. Heavy, confused, almost fragile. My brother was the first to break it. "Okay, what was that?" he said, forcing a laugh that did not land. "Seriously, Olivia, what are you pretending to be right now?" I leaned back in my chair, crossed my arms lightly, and for the first time that night, I met his eyes without looking away. "I am not pretending," I said. My mother shook her head slowly, like she was trying to reject what she was seeing before it became real. "Then explain it," she said, her voice softer now, uncertain. I let out a small breath, not dramatic, not emotional, just measured. "You really want to understand?" I asked. No one answered, but no one looked away either. So I continued. 2 years ago. I stopped asking for help, I said. Not because I did not need it, but because I realized something. I paused, just for a second. "You were never going to give it to me anyway." My father opened his mouth to interrupt, but I kept going. "So I found another way," I said. "I started small, consulting contracts, late-night deals, things you would never notice because they did not look impressive." I glanced at my brother briefly. No startup parties, no announcements, no applause. His jaw tightened slightly, but he stayed quiet. And then one deal turned into another, and another, until I had enough to do something bigger. I tapped lightly on the table, once. "That building," I said. "The one we are sitting in right now, was on the market quietly. No public listing, no headlines, just a number and a deadline." My sister blinked, trying to process. "That is not possible," she said, almost to herself. I tilted my head slightly. "It is, if you know where to look." My mother's voice came out almost as a whisper. "But your name is not on anything." I smiled faintly. Exactly. That was the part they could not understand, the part that broke their logic completely. "Ownership does not always look the way you think it does," I said. "Sometimes it is layered, structured, protected." My father's expression shifted again, not anger this time, something closer to realization. "A trust," he said quietly. I held his gaze. "Something like that." He leaned back slowly, as if the weight of it was finally hitting him. You planned this," he said. I did not answer right away, because the truth was, I had. Every step, every decision, every silence. "I prepared," I said finally. "For a long time." My brother let out a sharp breath, running a hand through his hair. "So what, you just sat there, all these years, Pretending to be broke? I looked at him, steady. I was not pretending, I said. I was building. That word landed differently, heavier, harder to dismiss. No one laughed this time. No one smirked. No one looked at me like I needed to be explained. And for the first time in my life, I could see it clearly, not respect, not yet, but something close. Something uncomfortable, something real. My mother looked down at the table, her fingers tracing the edge of her glass. We did not know, she said softly. I nodded once. I know. Because that was the point, they were never supposed to know. Not until it mattered. Not until the moment could not be undone. I reached for my glass again, took a slow sip, and set it back down. And now, I said quietly, you do. And somewhere behind us, near the entrance of the dining room, I saw the manager stop, turn slightly, and speak to another staff member. A subtle movement, but enough. Because whatever I signed, whatever I just approved, it was already in motion. And the part they still did not understand, the part one had not said out loud yet, was that tonight was not just a reveal. It was a decision. And in a few minutes, they were going to find out exactly what that decision meant for them. My father was the first to stand up, not fully, just enough to shift the air at the table, like he was trying to reclaim control of something that had already slipped through his hands. Olivia, he said, slower now, careful. What exactly did you just approve? I looked at him, calm, steady, and for a moment, I let the question sit there. Because this was the part that mattered, not the money, not the building, but the consequence. A lease restructuring, I said finally, simple, almost quiet. My brother frowned immediately. That does not mean anything, he snapped. People restructure leases all the time. I nodded slightly. They do, I said. When tenants fall behind. That word, tenants, landed differently. My sister straightened in her seat. Wait, she said, her voice tightening. This building, you are saying we are, she stopped herself before finishing the sentence, but she did not need to. My father's eyes moved slowly around the room, taking in the private dining area, the staff, the quiet efficiency of everything around us, and then back to me. Who holds the master lease? He asked, more to himself than to me. I tilted my head just slightly. The operating company, I said, which reports to the holding entity. He exhaled slowly, like he already knew where this was going. And you control the holding entity, he said. Not a question, a conclusion. I did not confirm it. I did not deny it. I just held his gaze. That was enough. My brother let out a short, disbelieving laugh, but there was no confidence in it anymore. This is ridiculous, he said. We are not tenants. We are here for dinner. I leaned forward slightly, resting my hands on the table. Tonight, yes, I said. But your office, your lease on the 18th floor, your company's space, I let the rest hang. His expression changed instantly, the realization hitting him all at once. No, he said quickly, shaking his head. That is a long-term contract. We signed that 2 years ago. I gave a small nod. You did, I said. With a management firm. My mother's voice came out barely above a whisper. And that firm, I finished it for her. Reports to me. Silence. Not the confused kind, not the awkward kind, but the kind that settles deep, that forces everything into focus. My brother pushed his chair back slightly, the movement sharp, restless. You're saying, you can just, what, remove us? He said, his voice rising, not loud, but strained. I did not react to the tone. I just answered. I am saying, I said calmly, that I can decide how that space is used moving forward. My sister stared at me, eyes wide now, searching for something to hold on to. But why? She asked. Why would you do this? I looked at her, and for the first time, there was something heavier behind my voice. Because for years, I said, you all decided what I was worth, without ever asking. My father closed his eyes briefly, just for a second, then opened them again. This is not the way to handle that, he said, his tone shifting, softer now, almost measured. I shook my head slightly. No, I said. This is exactly the way. He did not argue this time. Because deep down, he understood. Not the details, not the structure, but the outcome. The shift in power, the reversal, The fact that this was no longer a conversation he could control. My mother reached for her glass, but her hand stopped halfway, like she had forgotten what she was doing. "We would have helped you," she said quietly, almost reflexively. I met her eyes, and for a moment, I let the silence answer for me. Then I spoke. "You had years," I said, not angry, not emotional, just clear. My brother ran both hands through his hair, pacing slightly beside his chair now. "So what happens next?" he asked, his voice lower, cautious. That question, that was the one everything had been building toward. I leaned back in my chair again, letting the weight of it settle before I answered. "That depends," I said. "On what you think this is." He frowned. "What do you mean?" I held his gaze. "If this is just business," I said, "then we follow the terms, the performance, the numbers." I paused, just long enough. "And if it is not?" my sister asked softly. I looked at all of them, one by one, not rushing, not avoiding, just seeing them clearly for the first time. "Then it becomes something else," I said. No one spoke after that. Because they understood. Maybe not fully, but enough. This was not just about leases, or contracts, or buildings. This was about every moment they had dismissed, every assumption they had made, every version of me they had decided was permanent. And now, sitting at that same table, in a space they thought they understood, they were realizing something they had never considered before. They were not in control anymore. And the part they still did not know, the part one had not said yet, was that I had already made my decision before I ever walked into that room. I did not answer right away. I let the question hang there, heavy, unfinished, because what happens next was never something I needed to rush. My brother was still standing, pacing just enough to show. He had lost his center, while my sister stayed frozen, her fingers curled tightly around the edge of the table. My father watched me, not speaking, not interrupting, just studying, like he was trying to understand how far this had already gone without him noticing. "You already decided," he said finally, his voice low, controlled, but different now. Not authority, not certainty, something closer to recognition. I nodded once. "Yes," I said, simple, final. My mother swallowed quietly. "Olivia," she began, but the words did not follow. Because there was nothing left to soften this. Nothing left to redirect it into something comfortable. I leaned forward slightly, resting my hands on the table again, grounding the moment. 2 years ago, I said. When I closed that deal. I also set terms. My brother stopped pacing. "Terms for what?" he asked, sharp again, but thinner now. "For situations like this," I said. He let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh, but it fell flat. "You planned this, even then?" I held his gaze. "I prepared for possibilities," I said. "Not for you, but for anyone who thought I did not matter." That hit differently. I could see it. Not just confusion anymore, but something heavier, something closer to accountability. My father's voice came in steady, measured. "What are the terms?" he asked. That question, that was the first real shift. Not denial, not dismissal, but engagement. I nodded slightly, acknowledging it. "The leases under the holding structure include a performance clause," I said. "Standard on paper, but specific in execution." My sister shook her head slowly. "You are talking like this is just business," she said, her voice tight. "But this is us." I looked at her, calm. "You made it business a long time ago," I said. She did not respond. Because she knew, somewhere under all of it, she knew. I turned back to my father. "The clause allows for restructuring when a tenant fails to meet defined benchmarks," I continued. "Financial stability, operational growth, strategic alignment." My brother frowned. "We are not failing," he said quickly, defensive now. "Our company is doing fine." I tilted my head slightly. "Fine is not the benchmark," I said. "Growth is." He opened his mouth, then stopped. Because he knew what I knew, that the numbers had not been strong enough, not for what they promised, not for what they claimed. My father exhaled slowly. "And you already evaluated this," he said. Not a question. I nodded once. "Quarterly, for the past 18 months. That landed harder than anything else. My mother's hand finally lowered back to the table, slowly, like the weight of that timeline was settling in. "You were watching," she said quietly. "I was responsible," I corrected, not harsh, just precise. My brother shook his head again, but there was no argument behind it now. "So, what does that mean?" he asked, quieter this time, almost cautious. I leaned back again, letting the space open before I answered. "It means," I said, "that the current lease is no longer aligned with the performance expectations." My sister's voice dropped to almost nothing. "And?" I met her eyes. "And I approved a restructuring." Silence again, but this time it was sharper, more focused, like everyone was bracing for what came next. My father spoke first. "Define restructuring," he said. I held his gaze, steady, unflinching. "It means the space will transition to a new operating tenant," I said. "One that meets the criteria." My brother stared at me, the realization hitting fully now. "You are replacing us," he said. Not disbelief, not denial, just clarity. I did not rush to soften it, did not dress it up. "Yes," I said. The words settled heavily, final, undeniable. My mother's eyes dropped immediately. My sister leaned back slowly, like the air had shifted around her, and my brother just stood there, still, processing something he could not push away anymore. My father did not move. He just looked at me, long, steady, and for the first time, there was no attempt to control the outcome, no attempt to redirect the conversation. Just understanding. "When?" he asked quietly. I answered just as calmly. "Notice goes out in the morning," I said. 30-day transition window, standard compliance terms. My brother let out a breath, slow, heavy, like the fight had finally drained out of him. "You are serious," he said, almost to himself. I did not respond. I did not need to. Because everything about this moment, everything about the way I had sat there, spoken, decided, made it clear. This was not a reaction. This was not emotion. This was execution. My sister looked at me again, her voice fragile now, unfamiliar. "You would really do this to us?" she asked. I paused, just for a second, not because I did not have an answer, but because I wanted her to hear it clearly. "I did not do this to you," I said. "I made a decision for myself." And that was the line they could not cross back from. Because in that moment, they finally understood something they had ignored for years, that I was no longer part of the system they controlled. I was the one setting it. And as the silence settled one more time, deeper now, heavier, I reached for my glass again, took a slow sip, and let the moment breathe. Because what they were feeling now, that uncertainty, that shift, that loss of control, was something I had lived with for years. The only difference was, now it belonged to them. No one spoke for a long time, not because they had nothing to say, but because for the first time, nothing they said would change anything. My brother slowly sat back down, the energy gone from him now, replaced with something quieter, heavier. My sister kept staring at the table, like if she did not look up, this might somehow reverse itself. My mother finally folded her hands together, tight, controlled, like she was holding something in place. But my father, he was still watching me. Not with anger, not even with disappointment, but with something I had never seen from him before. Respect, mixed with regret. "You built all of this, without us," he said quietly. I held his gaze, steady. "Yes," I said. He nodded once, slowly, like he was accepting something he could not undo. "And you never said anything," he added. I let out a small breath. "I tried," I said. "Just not in ways you recognized." That landed, not loud, but deep. My mother's eyes flickered toward me, uncertain. "We did not know how serious you were," she said, almost defensively. I shook my head slightly. "No," I said. "You just decided I was not." Silence again, but different now. Not sharp, not tense, just heavy with things that should have been understood years ago. My brother leaned forward slightly, his voice lower now, careful. "Is there anything we can do?" he asked. That question, that was new. Not entitlement, not assumption, but request. I looked at him for a moment, really looked this time. Because this was the part no one expects, not the reveal, not the power, but the choice that comes after. "There is always something you can do," I said, calm, measured. His eyes lifted slightly, searching. My sister finally looked up too, hope mixing with hesitation. Even my mother leaned in, just a fraction. My father did not move, but I could see it, the attention, the awareness. I paused, just long enough for the weight of it to settle. But not everything changes the outcome, I continued. That small shift, that distinction, it landed immediately. My brother's expression tightened again, but not in anger, in understanding. What does that mean? He asked. I leaned back slightly, letting the distance return. It means, I said, that decisions have already been made, processes already started, agreements already in motion. My sister's voice came out softer now, almost fragile. So there is nothing we can do, she said. I tilted my head slightly. There is something you can do, I repeated. Just not what you think. My mother frowned slightly, confusion mixing with concern. Then what? She asked. I looked at her, steady, clear. You can decide how you move forward, I said. Without assuming I will adjust for you. That was the line. That was the shift they had never experienced before. Because for years, I was the one adjusting, the one bending, the one making space for their expectations. And now, that role was gone. My brother leaned back slowly, exhaling. So this is it, he said, not questioning, just stating. I did not respond immediately, because this was not about finality, it was about clarity. This is what happens when you ignore something long enough, I said, quietly. My father's eyes dropped for the first time, just briefly, then lifted again. We underestimated you, he said. I nodded once. Yes, I said, simple, without weight. He held that for a moment, then asked the only question that mattered now. And if we had not? I paused, just for a second. Because that question, it was not about the past, it was about something else entirely. Then this conversation would not be happening like this, I said. Not softer, not harsher, just true. My mother looked down again, her voice barely above a whisper. We thought we were helping you by being honest, she said. I did not interrupt. I did not correct. I just listened. You were defining me, I said after a moment. Not helping me. That distinction, it settled quietly, but completely. My sister closed her eyes briefly, then opened them again, slower this time. I do not even know what to say, she admitted. I nodded slightly. You do not have to say anything, I said. Because that was the truth. Not every moment needs words, some just need to be understood. The room felt different now, not tense, not hostile, just shifted, like something permanent had moved into place. I reached for my glass again, but this time, I did not drink. I just held it, feeling the cool weight in my hand, grounding myself in the moment. Because this was not about proving anything anymore. That part was over. This was about what came after. And as I looked at them, one by one, I realized something I had not expected. I was not angry. I was not even satisfied. I was just done. And sometimes, that is the most final thing of all. The silence did not break. It settled deeper this time, more permanent, like something in the room had shifted into a place it could not move back from. No one reached for their phones. No one called the waiter. No one even looked at the untouched plates anymore. Because this was no longer dinner, this was something else entirely. My father was still watching me, but not the way he used to, not measuring, not judging, just observing. You're different, he said quietly. I tilted my head slightly. No, I said. I just stopped waiting. That landed, not sharp, but undeniable. My sister exhaled slowly, her voice careful now, like she was stepping onto unfamiliar ground. Waiting for what? She asked. I looked at her, steady. For one of you to see me without needing proof, I said. She looked down immediately, because there was no answer to that. My brother leaned forward again, slower this time, more controlled. You said this is done, he said. But is it really? I held his gaze. The decision is done, I said. What comes after is still unfolding. That word, unfolding, gave him just enough to hold on to. So there is still something we can change, he said. I shook my head slightly. Not the outcome, I said. Only how you respond to it. He leaned back again, absorbing that, letting it settle. My mother finally spoke, her voice softer than I had ever heard it. Olivia, she said, then paused, like she was choosing her words carefully for the first time. If we had listened, would you have told us? That question, it hung differently. Not defensive, not dismissive, just honest. I considered it, not quickly, not automatically, but fully. Maybe I said, but you would not have believed me. She nodded slowly, because she knew that was true. My father shifted slightly in his seat, his voice lower now, almost reflective. You built something real, he said. And we reduced it to nothing, because it did not look the way we expected. I did not respond,